Hey guys, it's Leona Nicole Black and welcome to Not Your Twin Flame Guru. This is new content that I'm going to be sharing and putting out all around the twin flame energy and the twin flame dynamic from a personal perspective. It's called Not Your Twin Flame Guru because I feel like there's a kind of dichotomy in the twin flame space digitally where either you have people who are twin flame teachers, leaders, spiritual kind of experts on the dynamic, and then you have the people who are reaching out for the information. So what to expect from this channel and what I'm going to be putting out: you will not be getting weekly videos saying union is coming, and it will not be 10 things you need to do to get back with your twin flame. That is not what you will be getting here. So if that's what you're looking for, this will be a good time to switch off. So in this space, we're going to be talking about the unsexy twin flame topics. I want you to think of me as like your twin flame girl next door. I'm going to be speaking from a very personal perspective on just the very everyday dynamics of being in this space. So this week we're going to be talking about twin flame shame, and I'm going to get into what that's all about. But we'll also be covering things like separation dread, you know, how you deal with going from intimacy to absence and intimacy to absence, and this kind of dance of coming together and coming apart. And I'll be opening up to questions from you guys, so you can email me if there's specific things that you'd like me to discuss and talk about and put out there in a forum for you. This is really your space. And I'm really playing with my hair. When I realized or started to really connect with the twin flame dynamic and identifying myself in that way, one of the most challenging things for me was not having someone I felt I could talk to, being able to share it with my friends or my family. Like, it was this secret thing that was going on with me because it was on such a profound level spiritually and emotionally, and it felt very supernatural, and it was something that I cried over, that I prayed over. Like, I just want to be able to be my most honest, transparent, and authentic self about what's happening to me. So for those of you who are in a similar situation, I just want you to know and see this space as something that is here for you. I know that it's in the majority, it is the feminine energy, whether that is male or female in terms of gender, but it's the feminine energy that tends to plug into spaces like this and tends to be seeking and wanting to understand this process, and therefore there are a lot of women who identify with that. So think of me as your sister friend. Okay, I am here for you according to the limitations of my energy, and we will support each other through this by just being honest and candid and moving away as well from the hysteria actually of, you know, the attachment of needing to be with someone and needing union and needing this person in your life and the codependence of it, to really allowing this energy and this dynamic and this spiritual catalyst to be what it needs to be in your life on an everyday basis. Okay, so today's topic, twin flame shame. What do I mean by that? So when I refer to twin flame shame, I am talking about the aspects of the relationship, the process, the dynamic that does not in any way support your ego, your pride, or the identity that you've constructed for yourself, you know. So for me, I saw myself as a strong, confident, independent woman who was very intellectual and, you know, would not be made a fool of by a man. And yeah, I was in this dynamic with a person with whom I felt an inescapable bond and connection to. No matter how much from a mental space I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I'm moving on from this, or you're not responding to me in the ways that I really feel I need emotionally, and therefore I would like to sever this. Every attempt for me to do that fell flat, you know, like this in fact, the more I resisted, the more I said I can't do this, the more I said this hurts and I don't want to be with you anymore, and I am moving on with my life, was the more intense that connection became, and the more I pined and the more I longed to be with him, to communicate with him, and it started to really hit my self-esteem. In the beginning, I would say I felt like it was him. I felt like he was knocking my self-esteem. His actions, or if he didn't say certain things to me, or if he didn't satisfy certain emotional needs, and I was like, you are doing things that's making me feel less worthy, that's making me feel like maybe something is wrong with me, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm not lovable enough. But I recognize now that that was an illusion from me, because like the idea, sorry, that he was doing that and creating that in me was an illusion. The reason that I was triggering those thoughts is because those core beliefs were already there. They were already in me. If he acted in a particular way that made me feel like, oh, maybe I'm not as sexy and smart and confident and worthy as I think I am, it had nothing to do with him. It was because I held those core beliefs. And I have been on a super long journey of undoing the ego. So I want to dig deeper into this, because one of the things I think is important is that, in my opinion, the twin flame dynamic mirrors the social formations of like contemporary relationships, particularly codependent ones, that are based on kind of emotional neediness, right? And or just kind of building your life around the scaffolding of somebody else. You know, this idea that we will be more fulfilled, be more happy, experience more love in a relationship, and that's why we go in pursuit of other people, because they satisfy those emotional needs. I believe that so much of what we experience in the twin flame connection mirrors what we see in everyday relationships and dynamics between people. Why? Because we are here to heal that. You know, I feel like twin flames specifically are like on a fast track through hella pain. So it's not like a promotion, but it's like we're on a fast track towards healing those wounds, because it's our responsibility to be a light, to demonstrate another way of being, and to transmute the layers, the history, the lineage of trauma that we have become accustomed to in the relationship templates that we live with in our society at the moment. The way that we are directed into this path of healing and transmutation is through maintaining a connection with someone who mirrors your wounds, who shows you the most hurt, the most wounded, your ultimate shadow self, because they also possess that element within them, you know. So when you meet or come across your twin, for me, it is like coming home to yourself, like feeling the imprint of your soul in another person. Like, I am never more at home than when I am with him. Like, that's just what it is. And yet the dynamic between us, you know, like people talk about the runner chaser dynamic, like the ebb and flow of either one of us wanting to pull closer and the other person becoming fearful has dragged up, literally dredged up abandonment wounds, sexual trauma, poverty and scarcity consciousness, like all this stuff that I would not be required to deal with, to purge, to heal, if I were in a dynamic with someone who was satisfying my needs and my ego requirements, and who made me feel comfortable emotionally, sexually, spiritually, all these things, and I would never have to dig that deep to heal them. So it's challenging, because, okay, that, how does that differ from a toxic, codependent, karmic kind of relationship? And I've had plenty of those, you know, and it's something I reflect on, like, how does this connection differ to really painful, wounding experiences I've had with other men in my life? It differs because those other relationships left me smaller and weaker as a person, left me fragmented and less able to live my best life. And any healing that I did subsequently from almost all the relationships before this one was superficial. I can think of a few years back, I was seeing this guy who really just shell-shocked me in the way that he betrayed me and shattered my heart. And I remember it was over like either the summer or the Easter breaks. I'd been home, and I remember going back to uni, going back to Leeds, and going, right, something has to change. I just felt so wounded by the experience, and I started exercising and I started eating really well and I started reading, and I shut that part of myself off that was like so painful. I even remember walking up the stairs in my house one day and feeling, wow, I don't feel hurt. And I thought that was healing. I didn't understand that. I had learned to suppress my emotions and to channel and funnel it into, I'm a Virgo, right? So into very practical, efficient, like worldly earth-based activity to move forward. And yet when I encountered, you know, relationships with other men, I was petrified of being hurt. I was deeply distrusting. I remember saying to, you know, being in bed with a partner and saying like, are you gonna leave? Like, does that sound like a question from someone who has healed? Hell no. I even remember the same person who wounded me, who I'd spent all this time no longer feeling pain and like getting myself into a much more positive space, coming back into my life like months later, and me still opening that door. The difference with, you know, my divine counterpart is that the experiences that we have in the process of engaging and loving each other is in tandem with our spiritual awakening. So when I met him, I could not hide anymore. I'd actually gone for 6 years, had a really negative and painful experience, having grown up in the Christian church, and had just completely abandoned every aspect of my spirituality, not just faith, not just religion, not just churches, but I was shut myself down spiritually. And when I met him, I couldn't keep that part of me closed. It was like I just became so aware that there was so much more to my life than my 9 to 5, and things were shifting on a spiritual level, and it caused me to seek to go within, to really, you know, become the tarot reading super happy woman that I currently am. And that has been the kind of tremendous change and a tremendous difference, is that through my engagement with him and through staying actually connected to some of the very painful aspects of our relationship, they have caused me to really look into my woundedness, to look at him as a mirror reflection of the things that I really need to work on within myself, and to become conscious, to become aware of my inner life, of the inner dynamics of my world. And I can genuinely honestly say, and I hope it shines through in this video, I am such a larger person on the soul level. Like, I feel so much expansion in my heart space. Like, my inner world is huge now, and it was tiny before. And so on the topic of shame, very specifically, and I've taken a very roundabout way to getting here, I'm aware even as I record this video that as much as I want this to be for other twin flames and a space for us to connect and talk to each other, I am still holding in my conscious space my friends and my family and the people in my life who I haven't been able to tell about this situation, and I haven't been able to be honest with, and I've had to be super private with, and I find myself still wanting to explain this. I find myself still beholden to people's opinions and ideas, and that's where the shame comes from. That's the root of the shame, because it looks from the external space like something I shouldn't be doing. Just to put it straight, it looks, you know, it's difficult for people to differentiate that from, you know, toxic codependent relationships. And I think that's also why sometimes I stay away from twin flame chat rooms and, you know, comment spaces, because I feel like actually there just are a lot of super hurt people there who are looking for hope and looking for guidance, and quite rightly so, but are kind of projecting some wounding and staying in cycles and repeating cycles, rather than going on a process or a journey of transformation, and particularly inner transformation. And so I feel like I have kept this a secret, and I have, you know, only recently I was able to tell a family member, and I have, you know, a super close friend who isn't a twin flame but is so open and compassionate in the way that she engages with me on this topic, and really listens to what is happening, and, you know, trusts my direction of my life and my own intuition about the choices I'm making and where I'm at in this journey. But it is not easy in any way. It is not easy because I think we still want the validity. We still want, you know, we want the proof and the evidence that the choices that we're making in our lives make sense. And they make sense in the standardized way that our culture and our society sets, right? That if you are in a healthy relationship with someone, then it looks like moving in with them, and it looks like getting married, and it looks like having a baby. It doesn't look like, you know, periods of absence and separation. What our culture and our society teaches is conditional love. And I feel that there is a lot of shame, particularly for women or directed at women, around unconditional loving, you know, around the concept, like, we are very transactional in the way that we discuss love, particularly in the digital space, particularly in the meme space and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. We are very much like, if this person isn't doing this for you, if they're not taking you on to such and such date, if they're not expending this much money on you, if they're not doing all these things, and they're not worthy, and you're making a fool of yourself by being with them. And yet, part of the shame that twin flames and myself have to deal with, it comes with the territory of learning to love unconditionally. You know, learning to love without condition. And that doesn't mean making yourself open to abuse. It doesn't mean having no boundaries. It doesn't mean making your body readily available. It doesn't mean, you know, letting someone take from you indiscriminately. But it does mean that whilst you practice those boundaries, you know, whilst you take distance and space for yourself, that your commitment to that person's spiritual growth and well-being has not changed. It does not shift based on what they can give you, because you start to learn that it is your responsibility to feed and sustain yourself, to be your own reservoir of love, and you less and less and less require it of them. My love of my counterpart is not based on what he gives me. Like, I love him on a soul level. I am amazed by who he's come into this world to be, and that is enough. Do I want, you know, more intimacy, more growth? Do I want marriage and kids? Possibly. To the marriage and kids bit, yes. To the more intimacy and growth. But I think one of the things that the place I've got to recently, when I started just really going, like, being honest, you know, called a friend and I said to her, sometimes I feel humiliated, you know, sometimes I feel really humiliated by this experience. And I actually went online and I looked at spiritually the difference between, like, being humble and being humiliated. And I feel like, okay, humiliation relates to the deliberate cracking and breaking down of a person's ego. And whilst our ego is necessary, I'm not a person who thinks that the ego is all bad and we shouldn't have one. You know, the ego is here in many ways to make us feel grounded, to keep us connected to this, like, reality, and to keep us safe. When the ego is operating outside of that space, when it's directing our lives in other ways, that's when it becomes an interference, right? We're not living from our heart space or from our intuition, from these much, you know, more expansive parts of ourselves, until we go through kind of spiritual experiences of humiliation. And so I started reflecting on, you know, like, examples from mythical, religious and philosophical traditions. And even if you think about the experience of Jesus, that's what I really started thinking about, given I come from a Christian tradition. And I thought about, you know, Jesus going, you know, through those days before the crucifixion, as the story is told, and the praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, the betrayals that he went through, but also that kind of real painful walk of shame of someone who's supposed to be a Messiah being spat on and kicked and then ultimately crucified, right? And that was humiliating. Do you know what I mean? That absolutely humiliating. And yet the belief is that there was some level of restoration or resurrection or reconnection with the spirit self through the process of diminishing, you know, the human body in some way. And I feel like it is similar for us as twins, you know, that we go through things that shift and shatter our illusions and our attachments to what our lives need to look like on this physical plane. And I feel like the best way, from my experience, as I'm going through this myself, of dealing with the shame is giving into it, is admitting it. I called a friend and I was like, yeah, like I said, this is embarrassing, you know? And she's such a compassionate person. Do you know what I mean? Like, she really talked it through with me. And, you know, she said to me, if you could take shame away, you know, if you could make a choice that had nothing to do with how other people would view you or make a judgment, what choice would it be? And I thought that was such an empowering question, because it helped me find my heart center and how to make the choices that I need to make for myself. And that's where we need to be at. We need to recognize that our lives cannot look like what the culture demands that they should, because we're here to be countercultural. When you're feeling ashamed, when the story of your life just doesn't look pretty and it's not one that you feel so confident about sharing, you know, the one thing I really encourage you to do, and that I'm doing for myself right now, is to ask God, the universe, spirit, whoever you believe in, to ask what this energy is doing in your life right now, because that is where it's at. You know, that's where it's at. What is the purpose of what I'm going through? What is it requiring of me? What is it asking for me to heal? What is it asking for me to create in this moment? When I met my twin, I was so severely and deeply unhappy. I actually became suicidal. I was suicidal before that anyway, and definitely went through the depths of that. Through the process of my spiritual awakening as well, definitely sent me down to my absolute depths. But when I met him, the bliss of it, you know, and that, like I said, that spiritual homecoming, that just suddenly, like, the world made sense feeling, made me feel like I didn't want anything besides him. I was doing the PhD, I didn't want that. I didn't want any kind of job, I didn't want any creativity, I didn't even want my family. Like, I was just like, you know, Alicia Keys's nothing means anything if I can't have you, that song, right? I felt like that. I was like, if I can't be with him, if this relationship can't pan out, if I just can't have this real love that I feel here, then what's the point? Like, legit felt like that. And then through the process of what we've been through together, I have found my life. You know, I have found myself, I have found my joy. And that isn't to say that every day is amazing for me. You know, you guys know that's not true. It isn't to say that I don't have conflicts and difficulty and I'm not faced with challenges. It isn't to say that I haven't gone on a long journey to in dealing and healing my depression and finding kind of mental balance and figuring out what that harmony looks like for me on an internal level. I cannot say it hasn't looked like that, but I have now been like, I want myself and I want the life and the fullness and the wholeness of what it means to be Leona Nicole Black, what I am embodied here on this world to do, more than I want love with him, you know, like, that can't be it. Like, and it just isn't. And I found I have to be honest, I didn't know I could feel this way. I didn't know I could be happy. I didn't know I could feel any level of contentment at all. And I'm excited about the way that my life keeps expanding and growing. And, you know, and I'll talk about the ebb and flow in another video, but as we find our intimacy and our separation and find our intimacy again, every time we find that intimacy, we are both more whole, more loving, more spiritually open people, and more able to be present with each other. And I'm like, okay, do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I would like to stop doing the together apart, but I'm trying to really respect the process and what it has created in my life that I just would not have been able to create otherwise. You know, the beauty of me and the wholeness of myself. So I'll be honest, as a Virgo, I wish that I had been able to be a little bit more linear in this video, but it is what it is. Not your twin flame guru, so it is not a perfect exploration of these topics, but I hope you've been able to take away something. I think me watching it back for myself, I'll be able to take something from everything that I've said here, and I look forward to engaging with you guys either on my social media page, Nicole Black Online on Instagram, or via email, nicole@gmail.com, if you have thoughts or questions or just things you'd like me to explore in another video. And I will see you again soon, guys. Mwah.